welcome back to another season, another episode of Jacey's Creek podcast. I'm really excited about this season because it's finally the season that we all been waiting for, because they are finally a couple in this season for like 20 episodes. But 20 episodes that we get to talk about how they are as a couple and how they are as individuals and what makes them so good. And that is the whole point of this podcast. And I think in this season we'll really get down to the details of what makes them them and how their mindsets come together. Last season we really saw that. We really saw how Pacey got to open up his whole horizon to how he was as an individual and what made him fall in love with Joey. We watched him fall in love with Joey throughout that whole season, and to me that was the best part of it. It was for 22 episodes. I say 22 because he wasn't in one of them. We got to see Pacey be a very, very fine individual, but also who he was as a person made him more relatable to Joey, made him more like, oh, I kind of get it. And to Joey, it kind of made us go back with, oh, wow, Pacey really does get Joey in this part, and he does notice this and X, Y, and Z, and I think that's really where it comes down to. We get to see what makes them them. So in this season, we again get to see them as a couple, and we'll talk about that especially in this episode. And we finally get to see how they have to deal with the world and have to deal with Dawson. And we know that Dawson doesn't approve of them, but he let Joey go before he changed his mind, which still irks me, you guys. And I think in this season, we really get to go down to the things that make Dawson and Joey not more reliable than Pacey and Joey, because Pacey and Joey are very reliable, especially we'll see that in the next season and the next season, and I can't say the next season because there's only 2 more seasons. So this is a really big one again, and we'll get into that. Without further ado, I do want to say, make sure to follow my Instagram, Witter and Potter. I give updates on there, and I've been posting a little bit. I think I'm going to start posting soon, but by the time you guys hear this, I'll probably already be posting. And then I have, oh, by the way, I graduated this week, and it was a pretty big deal. I graduated May 17th. I don't know if I mentioned this last episode. By the time you guys are hearing this, I've already pre-recorded all the episodes, and I'm moving to Florida, so that's a big deal. So when they talk about, Key Island and stuff, I was very, very excited for that. I'm giving you guys, updates in the beginning, so that way I won't forget, and then we can just dive right into season 4, and I don't have to give any more updates. So that's what happened this week. And you guys heard the last episode yesterday, but that was kind of what happened. And so, I don't know if I mentioned that, but again, by the time you guys hear this, it's almost April right now. It's March 27th right now. And so I've been pre-recording since January, the end of January. And my goal is to get it done by senior year when it's completely done. So this is Pacey and Joey's senior year, so that's a pretty big deal. And without further ado, let's get into it. So this episode is how Joey returns home. Joey and Pacey return home to the questions about whether they had sex, and Pacey's sisters arrived from college without a diploma. So this came out on October 4th, 2000, I believe. Wikipedia says that. And we jump right into the first scene of Pacey and Joey. So Pacey and Joey are on the boat heading home, and Pacey says, "Hey, I found us some dinner," and Joey goes, "Seafood. Great change of pace." Which I love it whenever she says that. Sadly, we never got to see anything that happened throughout those 3 months that they were on that boat. We never got to see what they were like or how they were like, and it was very, very sad when we think about it, because I'm like, geez, why don't we get to see this? And so Pacey says, was that a note of disgust? I detect our sentence of the bored ocean-born. And Joey says, after this trip, if I never eat another thing that breathes through gills again, it will be too soon. And they're like, this is like the cutest position, I will say, in this episode. Besides, I can't even say that, because the last scene is very cute. But she, like, oh my gosh, when she puts her neck back, I'm like, girl, okay, I see you. And also Katie Holmes, I don't know if anyone noticed this, but she has, like, her speaker, her microphone thing on the side of her, and I found that so funny. That's all I gotta say about that. And, like, so Joey, like, kisses Pacey's neck. And so when I first saw this, I was like, did they do it? Like, I don't know why that my brain just went like that. I'm like, they did it, didn't they? And so Pacey says, so there she blows, Capeside mess. Our first and last port of the call. And Joey says, doesn't look much different than we left it, does it? And Pacey says, that's because it isn't for luck. It, like, you can tell, like, what kind of couple they are, because, like, Joey is, like, yeah, they're, like, kissing and doing all that different kind of stuff, but, like, when you look at it, he's still teasing her, and I find that so funny to me. And so Joey says, I'm no more of a race than you are to get back home, but it's not like we had any other choice in the matter. And Pacey says, we don't have to go home. We survived for 3 months taking odd jobs. We can survive for as long as we want, as long as we're happy. And Joey says, Pacey, if you're so serious about this, then why don't you bring this up 2 hours from home? And Pacey says, 12 hours from home. See, I think we should probably drop the anchor here, have a bite to eat, and then we can debate whether or not to scrap this whole mission home. And Joey says, no, I don't believe you, Pacey Witter. As charmed as your natural instincts may be, you never suggest on us skipping our senior year entirely. And Pacey says, just what would we be missing on the land of poorly scripted melodramas? Huh? I used to love the word melodramas because I'm in band, and so I'm a mellophone, so every time I hear a melodrama, like melodramatics or mellow whatever, I'm like, mellow. That's what I think every single time. So he continues by saying, recycle plot lines, tiresome self-revelation, and he kisses her while he says the next part. You throw in the whole occasional downward spiral of a dear friend and maybe baby here and a depth there, and all you really got is a recipe of some soul-sucking, mind-numbing inclines without throwing in the boat. This boat. And he says, well, finally, that's something And so he goes, I do best here, and then Joey says, you know, what continues to amaze me? And Pacey says, and what? And Joey says, how long you been without being thrown on this boat? And Pacey says, well, finally, something we can agree on. And if you know this scene, and you follow me on TikTok, you know that I love this scene. I'm sorry I messed up on that part. But, like, the way that they jumped off this boat holding hands, I'm like, okay, we get the picture. We get the picture of how they were the whole entire summer, and we get how they were and what they were doing and all this different kind of stuff, and I adore it. Like, I absolutely love how they did this, because it's kind of like they finally get that, like, reassurance for a moment that Pacey and Joey finally, like, went off and did whatever they want. But it's the fact that they kind of ran away from their problems that's going to make it a little bit harder, and we'll see that later. But right now, it's just Pacey and Joey without Dawson, and I feel like with that, it's like the best thing ever, I'm not going to lie. So then we have scene 2 of Pacey and Joey, and it cuts to them at the dock on Capeside. They're unloading their stuff home, and Pacey goes, boy, that was on the heavy side. Who's that for? And Joe says, my sister, I think. Is that everything? And Pacey says, yeah, for for right now, I figured we'll just leave the rest of the stuff and pick it up tomorrow. And Joey says, okay. And Pacey says, oh, before we leave, though, there is one thing we should cover. And Joey says, what's that? And Pacey says, well, they're gonna ask. And the summer between you and me, sexual speaking. And Joey says, no one cares, Pacey. Okay, maybe they care, but they're not gonna ask. It's too crisp. And Pacey says, we live in a crisp age. And Joey says, okay, so what are you gonna say? And Pacey says, that really depends. And Joey says, on. And Pacey says, what are you gonna say? And Joey says, well, I guess I'm gonna say nothing because it's no one's business. And Pacey says, that's good. Nothing sounds perfect. And Joey says, because they're not gonna ask. And Pacey says, oh, they'll ask. And they reach at the end of the dock, and they're about to, go their separate ways. And Pacey says, well, this is it. Last of our summer. And I go left, and you go right, and we spend the whole 24 hours with each other. If you're curious to why and the sadness, it's only because, to be perfectly honest, you were starting to get on my nerves, Joe. That is so funny to me. He's just to be completely honest, Joe, you're getting completely on my nerves. And again, sorry if I say any of this wrong, because I'm just kind of reading off what the script says. And I'm I always laugh at that because the way that they always make jokes with one another, and I feel throughout the whole summer they were bickering back and forth, but they were probably doing so much more in the way that we could never get over. And if you ever want to read a story on Pacey and Joey and how they did that whole summer, you should read The Man to Hold. I've spoken this several times. I think that's the best story if you want a grasp aspects of what happened. I feel that's a good one. And so, let's see. Joey says, oh, good. Well, because, I hate to think that after all our intimate talks, you were actually covering up your aching heart with the false bravo. And Pacey says, well, to put your mind at ease, I guess I'll call you tomorrow, maybe. And Joey says, oh, if you think about it, sure. And Pacey says, okay. And they begin to walk away from each other. And they literally just sprint back to each other. And it's this intimate kiss that just makes our hearts just so, you could see the passion in that kiss. And it gets me every single time. I love how they just come back together. And I'm yes. Yes, 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 yes. So then we have the next scene, which is scene 1 of Joey. And she is at the B&B, and Bessie and her are in the kitchen talking. And Bessie says, Joey, I can't believe you. I'm your sister. I'm entitled to know. And Joey says, no, you're not. And Bessie says, our faces. I'm your sister whom you ditched high and dry last June. I'm entitled to know. Which I'm Bessie, you're not. I wonder how angry Bessie was when everything happened. Was she okay with it? Did Bodie calm her down? What happened between June to now? And I guess it was September. And Joey says, open your gift. And Bessie says, a plant. And Joey says, it's a Carolina jasmine. At night, if the wind hits right, we could smell them 2 miles out from the water. And Bessie says, at night, while you and Pacey were... And Joey says, quit it. I haven't even unpacked yet. And Joey picks up her backpack and heads to her room, and she opens and shuts the doors, shut it real quick, and Bessie says, oh, hey, Joey, wait. And Joey says, why is there an underclass stranger in my bedroom? And Bessie says, that's where he lives. And Joey says, you rented out my room? And Bessie says, until Tuesday, come over here. It's your turn to give you a gift. Our accounting book. And Joey says, you're so kind. And Bessie says, look at the number. And there was a number that reads $17,240. That's a lot of money. For the B&B. For Joey, it probably felt like a lot of money, too. And Joey says, Bessie, I'm sorry, I didn't realize how difficult it would be. And Bessie says, Joey, it has the plus to the next, not the minus. Welcome to one of those successful B&B's breakfasts in the state, Joey. We doubled our rates, and we still book well through the fall. And Joey says, well, when I call you, you never mention. And Bessie says, I wanted to surprise you. And I like how Pacey's surprising her, but I feel like Joey at this moment kind of felt left out. Like, I feel like she's going to feel like that, especially throughout the episode. I feel like as much as she had fun with Pacey, she always kind of has that, like, oh man, now I feel kind of left out. I feel like that's just a teenage thing. And so then we have scene 1 of Pacey, where Pacey's in Doug's apartment, and Pacey says, it's a Florida snowman, get it? And Doug says, notice my fits of laughter. I don't know why that always cracks me up. And Pacey says, so, oh, yeah, how was my favorite couch bed? You've been keeping it warm for me? And Doug says, well, you know, it's funny you should bring that up. And Pacey says, oh, come on now, you're not gonna cast me to the wolves, are you? And Doug says, it seems I have to. Someone's already moved in. Sorry. Pacey says, you and Raphael finally decided to tie the knot. And Doug says, I see 3 months of the water has done absolutely nothing to improve your sense of humor. And Pacey says, don't tell me this is a girl or something. And Doug says, well, yes, as a matter of fact, it is. And Pacey says, oh, well, that's just fantastic. Just as I have a place to sleep, you decide to get all hetero on me. Which is true. Like, I feel like some episodes, like, he just kind of, like, teases Doug about this. And some episodes, he does not. And it's just always back and forth with how he, like, teases him. Like, some episodes, they're completely fine. Other episodes, Pacey's just bugging the crap out of Doug. And Doug says, as much as I love the end of your encounter comments regarding my sexuality, I assure you this relationship is purely platonic. And Pacey says, good. Then I'm pretty sure whoever this mystery guest is possibly be as important as your baby bro. And Doug says, that's where you're wrong, because she's equally important and equally related. And then Gretchen walks to the door, unaware that Pacey is back. And Gretchen says, sorry I'm late, Doug. I stopped at the hardware store and to get some light bulbs. And Pacey goes, Gretchen? And Gretchen says, haha, welcome home, loser. Come give your sister a hug. And I remember the first time I saw Gretchen, I was like, what? He has a sister? And then I kind of remember, like, oh yeah, he has mentioned that several times in season 1. And I feel like Gretchen and him are, like, probably the closer than Doug, because you can just see it on his face when he first sees Gretchen. So then we have scene 2 of Joey, where it cuts to her walking to Dawson's bedroom, and she slowly opens the front door, and no one's home. And Joey says, hey, hi, hello, Mrs. Cleary, Mr. Leary, Dawson, and she heads up to Dawson's room. And she has this, like, depressed look on her face, and the room has, like, changed dramatically. And all the posters are down, and they're in photographs of Jandy. I just combined Andy and Jen together. Jen, Andy, and Jack are up. Which I'm like, it's good that, like, Dawson had those friendships. And I'm glad that he took, like, some things down, because especially the soulmate thing. I mean, you gotta give that credit. That was a creepy picture. And I'm glad that Dawson had that, like, environment to kind of get himself over Joey as best as he can. And it was good for him. It really was good for him to do that. And I feel like it was good for Joey to see that, because she finally gets to realize that when she made the choice to go with Pacey, her whole life dramatically just changed. And I feel like that was really good for her to grasp. Then we have the next scene, which is scene 2 of Pacey. And he is in Doug's apartment, and Pacey says, well, I simply will not be replaced. It's too damaging on my fractured ego. And Gretchen says, oh, get over yourself. That's kind of funny. It's a sibling thing. And Pacey says, why don't you get over yourself, okay? Aren't you a college student or something? And Gretchen says, it's called taking time off. Sure, it is. And Pacey says, am I the only other Witter that clients won't full? And Gretchen says, mind your own business, little brother. And Pacey says, let's go over the quarters, and maybe I won't dig whatever source mess that lands in this remote corner of the world. And Doug says, all right, that's enough, you two. Now, Pacey, you have currently other living options. Gretchen does not. And Pacey says, Really? And might the other living options be, Dougie? And Doug says, well, starters, there's your boat. And Pacey says, are you joking? I spent the last 100 days living on that thing. And Doug says, okay, fine. Carrie and the no-neck monsters are still at Mom and Dad's, but I believe there's a couch there. Am I wrong? And he goes, oh, no, you're not wrong. I like to take a cult on the death road. And Gretchen says, hey, there's always a zoo. And Pacey says, down, Gritchdilla. I like that part where he calls her Gritchdilla, like or Gretchenzilla, or something like that. It's kind of funny to me. And Doug just, does not find that funny. He's like, as usual, your maturity is sour. I know. Why don't you stay with Joey? And Pacey says, what's that supposed to mean? And Doug says, well, you have a girlfriend now. I'm sure she will be more than happy to sit with you with the little bed, or share hers. And Pacey says, honestly, I do not appreciate that suggestion of tones that and quite equivalents it. And Doug says, Gretchen's got a point. Okay, I mean, if there's no extra room it's the D&B. And Pacey says, I'm not going to impose that upon the family. And Gretchen says, yeah, why would you want your own two opponents to that? And Pacey says, Gretchen, so good to have you home. Oh no, oops, silly me, I don't have a home anymore. That's so sad. I get that Gretchen needed a place, but she couldn't, find somewhere else to go for a little bit. And then again, she is a college student, so I kind of get it. I know that Pacey and Gretchen will get along later, but it's kind of sad at that moment because they have nowhere else to live. And he refuses to go back home, probably because his dad and, Carrie. And I feel bad for him at that moment. But he also said he had 3 sisters, and we only seen 2 of the sisters, so I wonder if the 3rd sister just refused to come home or whatever. And Gretchen says, hey, it pains me to see you this way. It really does. Pass the iced tea, please. Thanks. And I love how much, this is one thing I really do love. I love how much they, all the siblings just, show. It just shows completely. So then we have scene 3 of Joey. And it's at Jen's house, and Jen and Joey are sitting at the kitchen table, and Grams is sitting at the sink doing dishes. And Jen says, so football camp led to an unexpected scholarship at Andover Academy, and Henry and his parents decided that attending would double in his college options. So next thing you know, I'm dating a guy who's in boarding school 4 hours away. And Graham says, they're doing what Jennifer's terms the long-distance thing. And Jen says, which, ironically, Grams disapproves of. And Graham says, youth is a time to spend in now, not pending for solitude the weekends every other month or so. And Jen says, is there a pair of knitting needles calling your name somewhere? And Graham says, I suppose they are. Goodbye, Josephine. Nice to have you back safe and sound. Which, I love Graham. It's you can tell how much he's changed in the past 3 seasons, or 4 seasons, and it's showing in this episode. So then Jen says, okay, enough me, you're fresh from the world acquaintance. So, and then Joey says, we had the time of our lives. I mean, honestly, I don't honestly know where to begin with it. And I love the man to hold. I was talking about that earlier because Jen and Joey would write emails to each other, and it would be not those cute little emails, it's a long email. And the only other fan fiction that I've ever seen them do that, I believe, is in Me Only When I'm With You or something like that. I'm sorry, I can't think of the name right now. I read it often, and they have those emails when she's in Paris, and I love that, and I talked about that in season 1, I believe episode 13, I believe I talked about that, because I was talking about how Joey was going to go to Paris, but then she never did, and so I linked that one, I believe, in season 1, episode 13. Joey says, we're not talking. Okay, so Jen says, come on, Joe. I mean, if I wouldn't be a human if I didn't want to know. You and Pacey alone on the bus for 3 months. Everyone's gonna ask. And Joey says, we're not talking about it. And Jen says, with my experience with a particular yes or no question, no means no. And we're not talking about it means we did it. And Joey says, you got me. We did it. All day, all night, 24/7. Are you aware that there's at least 38 known differently sexual positions? And 42 if they're flexible enough. I love how sarcastic she is. It's just like, okay, like I get you, Joey. And Joey says, Jen says, okay, it's none of my business. And Joey says, Jen, how is everyone else doing? And Jen says, good. Yeah, everyone's good. And Joey says, I should be going. I promised Pacey I'll help with dinner. And Jen says, what are you doing tonight? You and Pacey just laying low? And Joey says, no, we're not doing anything. Taking our first official night from each other. And Jen says, well, we're going to a dive-in. Why don't you join us? And Joey says, I don't know. That's not a good idea. And Jen says, 8 o'clock, stuff much quote. I don't even know what that means. And she goes, and I'll tell everyone that you'll be there. And Joey says, bye. And then we have the next scene, which is scene 2 of Pacey and scene 3 of Pacey and Joey for that season. So, here we go. And so, Joey is sitting on the end of her dock, and she's like picking the corn. I don't really know what she's doing. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, where'd you even get that corn? Like, is that just me? When Pacey approaches, and Pacey says, he covers her eyes, and he goes, guess who? And Joey says, well, let's see. It can't possibly be my boyfriend. We're not supposed to see each other till tomorrow. He was growing sick of me. And Pacey says, yeah, that was before he found out he was homeless and needed a couch for the night. And Joey says, try again. B&B booked, and I'm on the couch myself till Tuesday. And Pacey says, is it just me, or you're starting to get distant feeling that this town really didn't miss us all that much? And Joey says, it serves the revelation of its wonderful life, everyone better without us. And Pacey said, except for each other. And then Pacey says, so what are you doing tonight? Want to grab some pizza, hang out on the boat? Or I was thinking maybe we could catch a bad summer movie at the 150 theater. What you say? And Joey says, well, actually, Jen invited me to the dive-in. And Pacey says, the dive-in? Everyone from school is going to be there in the dive-in. To be perfectly honest, I don't think I'm prepared quite yet. Were you going to go without me? And Joey says, we can go together. I mean, it'll be fun and healthy, to see everyone. And Pacey says, to see Dawson. And Joey says, yes, to see Dawson, which we talked about, Pacey. And it's no secret I'm anxious to get things squared away with him. And Pacey says, it's no secret, and to be perfectly honest, I don't really care where or how long as long as we do it together. And she says thank you. And I feel like in this moment, it's kind of like Pacey has changed, because when he wouldn't say anything to Dawson, he wouldn't be upset about it in the last season, but I feel like he would kind of say a little bit more than what he said. But finally he gets the girl, and Joey isn't really thinking about Dawson in a sense where it's like dragging her over and over again. I feel like the show just kind of written it like that. But I feel like the two really, really care about each other and love each other, and it shows in how they look at each other. It isn't like the way that he grabs her and like touches her face and they kiss and then she walks away and you see Pacey staring after her. It's one of those things that we know that Pacey and Joey, the 3 months that they were on that boat, they loved, they cared, they told secrets. Like, you could see where she was in all those intimate talks that we had, obviously there's something going on. And I feel like at this moment, it's where Pacey and Joey finally are in the same pace. You know what I mean? Literally in the same pace for pace. And it's one of those moments where we see her kind of let go of Dawson in a sense, but obviously there's so much past going on. It's like when you love someone, like for me, when I look my mom, I think about my mom, but sometimes it's hard because of her past. And so it's kind of like a burden in between because you're like, do I let go of the past or do I not let go of the past? It's all about like questionable things that are happening in your head. And finally, when you do, it's hard because you have to recover. You still have to like get over it. So Pacey and Joey ran away for 3 months and they were on this boat for 3 months, but they still have to go see Dawson and they still have to go see everyone else and they still have to be questioned and they can't run away from their life as much as Pacey wanted to do. And I feel like Joey knew that and Pacey knew that, but with their personalities it kind of like made it a little bit hard. So then we have scene 4 of Pacey and Joey, and they are walking down and they are hand in hand and they realize they see Dawson and he is not happy whatsoever. And Joey releases Pacey's hand and Pacey says, maybe this wasn't a good idea. And Pacey says, well, it wasn't my idea in the first place. And Joey says, do you think that, and Pacey says that we should go and get something to drink while you go and say hi? Sure. And Joey says, I think it will be easier. And Pacey says, yeah, no problem. I'll be back in a couple minutes. And Joey says, okay. And Pacey is not happy. And he was Joey's there. And it cuts to Jen and Dawson and Jack. And Jen says, and then it cuts to Jen, Dawson, and Jack. And Dawson leaves and because he doesn't want to see Joey, and Jen goes after him, and Jack heads to greet Joey, and Jack says, you got it, Joey, hey, and Joey says, hey, and Jack says, what's up, how are you, and Joey says, I'm good, how are you, and Jack says, I'm good, come on in, and Joey says, thanks, they're on the boat, by the way, and Jack says, it's good to see you, and Joey says, it's good to see you. Oh, someone's been lifting this summer, and Jack says, yeah. What else is gonna do in town, right? And Joey says, so where did everyone go? And she's talking about, like, Dawson, who just basically ran away from her. Like, talk about maturity. He was like, nope, bye, I'm getting myself out of this situation. Which, me too, Dawson, by the way. And so then we have the next scene, which is three of Joey. And it cuts to Pacey and Gretchen is on the beach when she sees them, which I'm like, how much older is Gretchen with Pacey? I don't think we know that at the moment, but I'm like, I feel like she's like 20 and he's 17, so they're like 3 years apart. And Pacey says, it's one thing to stir up the couch, but it's another to come back and stand on my special social Sunday. And Gretchen says, do you want to go on a walk? And Pacey says, yeah. And Gretchen says, do you hate me for taking your spot? And Pacey says, spot? Try bed. And Gretchen says, you hate me. And Pacey says, marvelously, yeah. And Gretchen says, well, repetitionally, it's yours. Doug wakes me up every morning at 7 a.m. desperate in the kitchen. It's like living with the farts over on crack. And Pacey says, well, you're hardly an innocent. Last we roomed together, you blared rock music so loud the small nation were kept up. And Gretchen says, not rock, Pacey, soul. There's a difference. And Pacey says, yeah, there's a difference. Band listen to rocks, but curiously thin listen to soul. And Gretchen says, is it possible that you've grown more nauseous over time? And Pacey says, well, it's a Witter way. And Gretchen says, and somehow you still got the girl. And Pacey says, yeah, I did. Who would have thought? Me and Joey would end up together. And Gretchen says, me. And Pacey says, you did not. And Gretchen says, it didn't take notorious to call it. Look at your similarities. You're the classic both underdog. She's sassy and you're like Jenna's annoyance. She's beautiful and you're lucky. I love the part where she says you're lucky. It's just so funny to me how she says it. She goes, you're lucky. And it does kind of like, I feel like Gretchen, that's why I was saying that Pacey and Gretchen are more close. because Gretchen kind of sees Pacey as like the person who is, like her little brother. It's like a little brother and a big sister relationship, and it really does show. Like, obviously they have like a room together and they like did a lot of stuff together, but Pacey kind of knows how Gretchen is, and Gretchen knows how Pacey is, and I feel like that's the best part about this whole relationship. And Pacey replies back to her by saying, there is a compliment and there is somewhere, right? And Gretchen says, you're both lucky. And Pacey says, thank you. And what about you, Gretchen? Honestly, why did you come back here? And Gretchen says, taking a break, that's all. And Pacey says, alright, well, as they say in the non-dysfunctional families, welcome home, Gretchen. And Gretchen says, and speaking of home, I suggest that you think you might find appealing. And Pacey says, yeah. And then we have scene 4 of Joey. And it fades to Pacey and shows Jack and Joey sitting on the boat at the dive in. And Jen and Dawson are off in the distance. And Joey looks at Dawson before talking to Jack. And Joey says, ask me a question. And Jack says, I get it. It's old. Let's start small talk until he comes over, right? And Joey says, proceedly, just ask a question. And Jack says, actually, I do have a question. And Joey says, not that question. And Jack says, come on. And Joey says, Jack. And Jack says, I won't tell anyone, I swear. And then Dawson approaches Joey, and Joey says, hey. And Dawson says, hey. And Jack says, yeah, I'm gonna find Jen. Like, Dawson finally gets the common sense to go over to Joey instead of being like a little baby and run off into the distance. That's still my favorite part about this whole episode, where Dawson is like, see ya! And Dawson says, she's right over there, and Jack says, okay, thanks. And Joey says, so how's it going? And Dawson says, oh, great, it's going great. And Joey says, how was your summer? And Dawson says, it was brief but good. Yours? And Joey says, brief but good. You look great. And Dawson says, hey, you too. And Joey says, thanks. And Dawson says, you too, thanks. And Joey and Dawson at the same time say, school Monday. School's in. And yeah. And Joey says, it's good to see you. And Dawson says, it's good to see you too. And I feel like, those awkward moments where you, go up to someone or you get a text from someone where it's like, how are you? I'm good. You? And it's like, that's good that you're good. I've been having the same conversation with my best friend about it, and it's so funny to me. I'm like, we need to, figure out what this is, because I can't do this all the time. And that's kind of how Joey and Dawson are at that moment. So then we have scene 5 of Pacey and Joey. And it cuts to Joey sitting on the beach looking for Pacey, and Joey goes, there you are, and Pacey says, and here we go, and he takes her hand, which I feel like was kind of aggressive, not gonna lie, but when Pacey's angry, he's angry, and he's not gonna show it, but we can tell that he's angry. And Joey says, what are you doing? And Pacey says, both of us a favor, taking us home. And Joey says, you're not even gonna ask me if I want to go? And Pacey says, do I have to? And Joey says, maybe I'm having a fun time. And Pacey says, if this is what you look like when you're enjoying yourself, Joe, then you were not having a good time on the boat this summer. And you never want to look like that. And Joey says, and you never once behaved like this. And Pacey says, and just how am I behaving? And Joey said, I don't know. Currently I'm deciding between innocent and mature and unwrinkled untrained boyfriend. And Pacey says, I don't even want to come here in the first place. And Joey says, well, you shouldn't have come. And Pacey says, well, yeah, I guess you would love that, huh? Would you have given all the time in the world to spend with Dawson? Those are your words, right? Square things away. And Joey says, Pacey, dealing with Dawson is a reality to me. It's a reality to both of us. And Pacey says, the guy hates me, okay? I can't fix that. And Joey says, you could try. And Pacey says, I don't want to. And Joey says, I do. And I'm sorry if that's a problem, if you have a problem with that. And Pacey says, you're damn right I have a problem with that. You're not even unpacked yet. And the first thing you do is, and Joey says, look, I can't help that he's been on my mind, but it doesn't mean what you think it means. And Pacey says, I don't know what it means. I don't care what it means. I just watched you grow more and more preoccupied every day this week, and I'm tired of it. and it better stop. I think the way that Pacey says this is wrong in a lot of ways, and Joey knows that, and Pacey knows that. But it goes back to his family when you think about it. I don't think Pacey has ever dealt with someone in his family that is less controlling. And so Pacey in this episode is kind of in the scene, actually, not in this episode, is pretty controlling in this moment. Because when he has something on his mind, when he's dealing with something, it's kind of he doesn't know how to handle it, so he just expresses it with anger. And I feel this happens a lot in this season. And he comes up and he snaps at Joey, but he's he's that type of person that cannot say what he's trying to say. So therefore, the only thing that he can express it with is pure anger. He's and I used to be like that, so that's how I know. But it goes back to the fact that, first of all, he got home and automatically he was sent back to his boat because he had no room. His sister took over the couch. He can't go back to his mom and dad's house because his sister's over there again, and his nephews and niece. I think it's just his niece though. I don't think he has nephews. I think he has niece. Anyway, they're over there, and he knows that his dad and him are gonna fight, and I feel that was one of the reasons why he moved out. So it kind of goes back to that. It's not that Doug and Gretchen weren't happy to see him, but it's obvious that things change when you're gone for 3 months. And then you have Joey, who wants to get things right with Dawson, and that's the only thing that she really wanted to do. And Pacey kind of took that out of context because he was alright, Joey automatically wants to say hi to Dawson. What does that mean? Where does that go? How does that go? What does that mean? I feel his mind is just racing, and I feel part of him is just anxiety too. Pacey has some type of anxiety, but it goes back to what I was saying I don't think it was a couple episodes, I think it was 10 episodes ago, where I was talking about the 3 things. He's either talking about sex, or he's talking about insecurities, or he's talking about love. And I feel in this episode, it's about the love and insecurity. And you mix those together, and it comes out to jealousy. And this is the way that he knows how to express it, because the only way that he was taught to express something is out of anger, because I bet that's how he saw his dad and mom fight about this kind of stuff. And Doug obviously hasn't taught him this. Gretchen probably never taught them this. And Carrie, his older sister, obviously does not have a good relationship with her children's father, so there's a whole thing there. So the only relationship that Pacey has been in, I say relationship like that because Miss Jacobs, but Andy was one of those big things, and it ended up with her cheating on him. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and I feel at that moment he's just so scared of what's going to happen if Joey does not love him enough. And Dawson hated his guts when he left, and he still does. So how does he know things are gonna go back the way that they were if Dawson hates him? So then we have Joey saying, "You better watch who you're ordering around. You got up that," and Pacey says, "We're not on the boat, and we haven't been for." Oh, sorry. She goes, "Pacey, we haven't been on the boat, and we haven't for a day." And Pacey says, "Who are you kidding, Joe? Come on, you got off that boat long before the 2 of us did." And Joey says, "What is that supposed to mean?" And Pacey says, "You're a smart girl, Joe. You can figure it out." And he walks away mad and leaves Joey just standing there. Which leads us to the scene where Joey is parking in the parking lot against a car, and Dawson sees her and approaches, and Dawson says, "Still here, huh?" And Joey says, "Yeah, I was just thinking." And Dawson says, "A highly overrated activity, if you ask me. So, are you heading home?" And Joey says, "Yeah." And Dawson says, "Do you need a ride?" And Joey says, "I love that, Dawson." And one thing I do have to say about this is the fact that Pacey just kind of leaves her. I feel like that's one of those jerky moves, but in a sense it kind of does make sense, because he's just so jealous. And I bet Dawson's haha, I stuck at the girl. Really, he does not. So then it cuts to Joey and Dawson getting out of the car at Joey's house, and they're walking up the porch, and Joey says, "So about this Neil and Clara loving a photographing that seems to sprung up in my absence." And Dawson says, "I picked it over this summer. Didn't think I liked it nearly as much as I have. But, I guess the way it always is, huh?" And Joey says, "What's that?" And Dawson says, You don't choose what you love, it chooses you." And Joey says, "Dawson, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry for everything that happened last year, and I'm sorry for what I did to you. I know how difficult it was, and probably still must be." Pacey said, and Dawson says it wasn't easy, thinking about you two together and every day and every night. And Joey says, "You're actually the only person that hasn't dared to ask the big question." And Dawson says, "I'm the only person that could potentially..." What? He goes, "I'm the only person that the answer could potentially kill." And Joey says, "Wait here." And Joey goes in the house, and she gets a box that said, Pacey goes, "Oh, this is heavy. Who's it for?" And Joey says, "Probably Pacey." And Joey says, "It's for you." And Dawson says, "Ernest?" And he goes, "Okay, whoa, it's my own very big brick." And Joey says, "It's not a brick. It's the hardest home in the Kings." And Dawson says, "Ernest." And Joey says, "No, Frank." And she goes, "Of course it's Ernest." And Dawson says, "You know the guy shot himself, Joey." And Joey says, "Aside from that offer, I'd like to offer you as a," and Dawson says, "Please don't say symbol." And Joey says, "As an unfriend offered, resembling at the foundation of a new friendship." And Dawson says, "I feel like I'm at a ribbon cutting of a new strip mall." And Joey says, "Quit joking." And Dawson says, "True face, Joey, it's going to take a hell lot of more symbols for us to get back to where we are. And right now, I'm not even sure that I want to. We gotta have to take it one day at a time." And Joey says, "I know." And Joey begins to walk away into the house, and Dawson walks into his car. And just as she's about to go inside, she goes, "Hey, Dawson, for what it's worth, to answer that question that everyone's been asking, it wouldn't kill you." So I think with this scene, there's a lot of things that did happen, and there's a lot of things that went down. But at this moment, I feel like it was one of those things that we see Joey just finally kind of coming to her senses, like, oh, okay, so yeah, it's not going to take signals. But we kind of see how Dawson treated Joey in the beginning of season 3, where suddenly he wanted nothing to do with her because of the thing that happened in the last episode from whatever season 2 or season 3. So it was kind of like that. So now we're in the beginning of season 4, and nothing has really ever changed. Because Dawson's still that person. He's trying to be the bigger person. He's trying to make everything happen. But really, it's kind of one of those things like, okay, Dawson, you said that you would be friends with Joey, but just not Pacey. So is he not being friends with her because of Pacey? Or is he not being friends with her because he just doesn't want to be friends with her, because he loves her? And I feel like at this moment, it's just like, it's awkward, there's a lot of tension. Dawson's hair is different, he's different, he likes photographing instead of filming. Like, there's so many different things about Dawson, there's so many different things about Joey because she was on a boat for 3 months. And it's not like one of those things where they wrote to each other. It's not like she knew anything about Dawson until she walked into his room and saw everything that was completely different. So she grabs her keys and she goes to Pacey, which leads us to scene 5 of Pacey, where she gets her car keys and she drives to the boat to talk to Pacey. And Joey clears her throat when she sees Pacey, and she says, Pacey does not look at her, by the way, and she goes, "Well, I decided on something, it's perhaps the single most important thing that I realized in the last 45 minutes, so I must share with you. This town has too many stoplights for someone who is not very good at driving today. I stalled 7 times coming here." And Pacey says, "Too bad it wasn't 8. And Joey says, "I stalled 7, and 6 out of the 7 times, do you know what I thought about? You. It's this secret thing I like to do. I get really pissed off or confused or sad or angry. I think of you, and immediately I feel good. I guess it's kind of the taking a good mood pill or something. And I swore to myself that I would never tell you that I did this because it's girly and it's stupid. And I just told you because I need to score major points for not explaining what went down tonight. Or I've been the last week and I haven't been on this boat. And Pacey says, keep going. And Joey says, Pacey, I went to see Dawson tonight not because for the 4 months of my life he was my boyfriend, but because, again, it always cracks me up that it was 4 months. Like, it wasn't even that long. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so they're just like, oh my gosh. It was because the small part. Okay, it was because the small part of the better life he was my friend, and as my friend I deeply hurt him. Living with that could cause me no small amount of guilt over the past 3 months. So yes, I've been preoccupied and made my mind wander, but my heart, that's a fixed point. 3 months riding in the open waves wouldn't shake it, and I'll be damned if I let my insecurity shake it. My heart has never left this boat. It's never left you. And as far as I can see it, it's never leaving anytime soon. And I feel like that's the moment where Pacey looks at her and he believes her. He fully believes her. And it's like one of those moments where she has to reassure him, and she reassures him a lot of times in this season because Pacey is so insecure because of how deeply hurt he was by Dawson. And obviously the show doesn't cover it enough, but yeah, Dawson got hurt by Pacey, but Pacey got hurt by Dawson because he was rejected by the one person he's known since he was 5 years old, besides Joey. And he was rejected, he was yelled at, he was like literally like being like Dawson was being competitive with like Joey, and it was all that kind of different kind of stuff that just made him like, oh dear, like if Dawson always wins, he's still gonna win Joey. And if Joey finally realized after 3 months of being with me and then we get off this boat and she's like, oh, you know what? You weren't good enough for me. I'm gonna go back to him. I think that was his biggest insecurities. And he knew that. Like, he generally knew that he was hurt by Dawson. It wasn't anything to do with Joey and Dawson. It was the fact that Dawson and Pacey's friendship was on thin ice, and then finally Joey kind of broke that ice and it like shattered, and it hurt. It hurt Pacey's heart and it hurt Dawson's heart. And it wasn't anything about Joey that made it. It was the friendship was already broken in season 2. Like, we saw that when Dawson missed his 16th birthday, I believe that was when their friendship kind of started falling apart. In season 3, it was kind of like glue was kind of stuck together, and then finally it got broken. Like, it was just broken all together. And it wasn't a very solid, good friendship in my opinion. We see Dawson kind of insulting Pacey so many times, but we know that Pacey knows that, so there were so many things that were going on. And then I believe the thing that really got them like to the point where I'm like, that's when the friendship is over, it was season 3, episode 17. I want to say that was the moment that their friendship was over because that was the parting way. And when Joey happened to fall in love with Pacey and all of that kind of stuff, and Dawson told him to go, it felt like it was that moment where Dawson and Pacey's friendship was really over. Like, it was gone, and we all knew that. So now we have Pacey and Joey finally having that moment where it was like, dang, okay, like, alright, like, this hurts. Like, it hurts to know all that. And again, it was nothing to do with Joey. Like, I feel like Joey was that thing to break the ice, but I feel like it had nothing to do with Joey. It was mostly about Pacey and Dawson, like how their beef. Like, that's how it is. And even Betsy kind of said it like that. Like, Betsy was like, let Pacey and Dawson handle what Pacey and Dawson's situation is. Like, you don't have to get in the middle of it. But as a teenage girl, you always feel like you have to get in the middle of it. So Pacey says, okay, you got me. I just want to know one thing though, though. I put though and Joe together. And she pulls him in, and like he pulls her in, and it's like really, really cute. And Joey goes, "What's that?" And Pacey says, "I just want to know exactly what you thought the 7th time you stole." And Joey says, "Then I wasn't going to drive stick again," which I felt that, Joey. Driving stick is actually really hard. And Pacey says, "How very practical." And they share a very long and intimate kiss. And Joey says, "Hey, Pace." And Pacey goes, "Hmm." And Joey says, "Do you think we could do that thing we do sometimes?" And Pacey says, "You want to do that thing?" And Joey says, "Yeah." Which leads to the last scene of Pacey and Joey. It's where they're on the boat and they're in their own hammock, and it's kind of like a bunk bed style. And Pacey's on top. Joey's on top and Pacey's on the bottom. And they're reading a book together, and Joey reads, "The little mermaid could not take her eyes from the ship or from the beautiful prince. The colored lanterns happened at swims. No rockets rose in the air, and the cannon that creased firing. But the sea became restless, and a moaning grumbling could hear beneath the waves." And she hands the book to Pacey, and he reads with the most satisfying voice, may I add. After a while, the sails were quickly unfurled, and the noble ship continues her passage. But soon as the waves rose higher, heavy clouds darkened the sky, and lightning appeared in the distance. A dreadful storm approaching, one more than the sails furled, and the great pursuing her and flying of course a rage in the sea. To the little mermaid this appeared the pleasant not-so-poor sailor. And he looks up, and he sees Joey sleeping, and he smiles, and he just watches her sleep. They're holding hands too, and it's just so cute. I'm like, oh my goodness, my heart could not take this scene. It's the cutest scene. That's why I was saying earlier, I'm like, maybe this is not a good scene. It's later, that's my favorite scene. And I just love how Pacey and Joey just took this moment and really made it intimate and special, because again, they were dealing with so much that were happening throughout this whole time. And it's when they separate the Joey and Dawson and Pacey and Dawson moment, they finally get this moment where they can just go back to the boat, go back to the summer, and find their love again on the true love. And that personally is my favorite part about the boat, and how they ran off together and they followed in the distance, because there's so much that happened and there's so much that went on, but they did not let that reflect them. And I like how we saw Gretchen. I like how, again, that was one of those sibling things. We got to see another part of Pacey's life. We get to see Joey and how Bessie was doing good without her. Joey and Bessie finally, I think we have talked about this a couple of times, Joey and Bessie have always struggled with, Joey's okay, so where can I put myself with Bessie? Do I go to the family, or do I make her the adult, or what do I do? And I feel finally we got to see that part of the scene, and there's so much that went on to make that good, but I feel Joey finally getting herself out of that situation, not saying that it was a bad situation, but finally putting herself and letting herself be a kid, made Bessie be able to raise that $17,000, which isn't a bad amount at all. And I feel especially in this small town Cape Side, there's a lot of space, so I can't really say that. They finally got to figure out where their place was, if you know what I mean. And then Dawson picking up Jen and Jack and all that different kind of stuff, and finally getting able, and Andy, and being able to do photographing and stepping away from Joey made Joey and Pacey a little bit better. And again, the symbol thing that they had going on, I feel it was more a apology that Joey could do, but I feel bad for Joey that Dawson rejected it. It was kind of sad, not gonna lie. So, if you like this podcast, please make sure to come back on Friday, Saturday, and Sundays. Make sure to review this podcast, give it 5 stars, leave a kind review, And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, that's Jacey's Creek Podcast, and leave your thoughts down below. You can put a thumbs up if you like, but please leave your thoughts down below, whatever you're thinking about this episode or a past episode, or even a future episode that you'd like me to mention. And lastly, if you have not already, make sure to follow my Instagram, that's Witter and Potter, my TikTok, that's Pacey and Joey, and again, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, I post every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Do all the things. Bye guys.